All right, we are live.
What do you mean we're live? I'm reading the documents from the archives right here. I'm up to page 79,312. I'm not finished yet. Can we maybe just turn off the show until I finish the last? I only got about 1,500 left, Eric.
Only 1,500 left
of the documents, Jim.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what we can do here. Okay, so you're done?
I have the documents right here. I have downloaded the documents and I've read the documents. I have them here. We'll go over them for the show right now. This is going to be very explosive. People at home, I don't know if you're ready for this. I have the actual documents right here.
Tell me more.
Okay. All right. So 2 o'clock's come and gone. Of course, there are no documents. They were not released as per the ineptitude of the Trump administration. As I repeated, and I'll repeat it again, there is no archivist. The archivist was fired by Trump. The deputy archivist resigned in protest. This was weeks and weeks and weeks ago. He has a person who is supposed to be the archivist. However, it is a Senate confirmation appointment because it's so important. He has decided that other appointments were more important. So there's no schedule yet for the archivist to be appointed. Why do I mention this? Same reason the documents were not released at 2 o'clock. The documents have to be scanned and uploaded onto the National Archives website. I've said this repeatedly. I've said it on X and I've said it here. That means someone's got to be in charge. I'm sure there's lower plebes who know how to do it, but nobody's actually the archivist of the United States at this time.
My theory, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that essentially when he said 2 o'clock, it was, we will deliver the documents to the archivist or the center by that time.
Your guess is as good as any other guess. The point of the matter is Caroline Levitt, if that is her real name, should have said what I just said or what Eric's saying, but they said nothing. So, of course, people are just going to rip their hair out. But that doesn't mean we don't have a show, because what I've done is I've cherry-picked some JFK documents out of my own top secret files to demonstrate just how important the JFK files are. I have picked out a handful of some of my favorites that have been released over the years because of the JFK Records Act and the Assassination Record Review Board. So we're going to go over some of the documents that have been released. You may not know them. They're some of my favorites. I will go into detail about what I think is going to happen of the documents that are released, and then I'll read some of these. For instance, and I've said this before, I believe that a lot of, and I'm not alone in this, Jim DiEugenio feels the same way, and some of my closer JFK research friends feel the same way. The documents that I believe are down there are Mexico City. Why Mexico City? Because the plot to frame Lee Harvey Oswald begins in Mexico City on September 28th, 1963. So if there are documents in that pile based on Mexico City, which many of us do believe, I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald was ever in Mexico City, and many of my fellow researchers agree with me. The framing, though, by certain people involved in the framing begins and operates in Mexico City, where they claim that Oswald was visiting to the Soviet embassy in Mexico City. Unfortunately, he runs into a receptionist named Sylvia Duran. Sylvia Duran is a resident of Mexico City. She's a Mexican who is working at the embassy, and they tried to browbeat her into saying that she saw Oswald at the embassy. Not only that, she denies having seen him and wouldn't cooperate. There are documents, according to sources, of the CIA ordering Mexican intelligence to lean on her very strongly, to make her confess to the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald was in that embassy. She's beaten savagely by Mexican intelligence. She's tortured by Mexican intelligence, all on the direction of our government. The CIA orders that from the Mexican authorities, and they carry it out quite savagely to Sylvia Duran. So there's that document series down there in the basement. And as I said, if you get into David Atlee Phillips as the Western Hemisphere chief of the CIA based at Mexico City, you will begin to see the framing of Lee Harvey Oswald September 28th, where they release a phony photograph of Oswald coming out of the embassy. Why do we know it's a phony photograph? Because it's been released because of the JFK Records Act and because of the Assassinations Record Review Board in 1994, 1995. These documents go to J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover also gets a copy of the audio tape, the phone call to the Soviet embassy. Just to give you a broader view of what's going on here. The Soviets were contacted by us after the assassination and told that they've got their man. And the Soviets were not going to be dragged into this plot. And they were told, this is according to Mark Lane. Now, next week, we've got a huge episode of Mark Lane. A lot of this stuff will come out about what Mark Lane uncovers in the course of his career, having written a number of books on this. Mark Lane explains how the Soviets agreed with the United States not to get involved in the assassination nor make hay out of it, Eric, thereby staying out of it completely. And a sidelight of that, because the Soviets, you would think, could make hay out of this politically, Eric, they threatened them by saying, we, the United States, will not accuse you of being involved in the assassination, even though we believe we could make that case, with Oswald as a defector. If you stay out of it, the whole world will be saved and we won't have to go to World War III. This is the back channel deal that the United States made with the Soviets. And how do we know the results of that? None of Mark Lane's books have ever been sold in a Soviet Union republic or the Soviet Union in the history of the Soviet Union.
To this day?
To this day. Well, the Soviet Union is gone. I'm saying the history of the Soviet Union.
Oh, sorry.
Right, and the Warsaw Pact countries. Mark Lane was not allowed, nor could any of his publishing firms sell books that would be like cheesecake to the Soviets in terms of propaganda. In other words, that was the back channel deal the Soviets made with the United States. And that was also part of the plot. Part of the scheme was LBJ did not want a war with the Soviets, but they wanted it quietly. They wanted it both ways, Eric. They wanted the Soviets to know that we knew that they knew that we knew. And the Soviets said, well, we don't believe any of this, so we don't know anything, but we're willing to cooperate with you so you don't launch a nuclear war like psychos. And the Soviets said, all right, we won't make political hay out of it, because they were being threatened with a frame. Like they were trying to frame the Soviet Union. And the Soviets said, look, we have nothing to do with it. Their opinion was that LBJ did it, not unlike many other people, Eric, who believed LBJ did it. This came out when the Venona documents came out after the fall of the Soviet Union, documents saying that their KGB analysis indicated to them that the main suspect in it was LBJ. And rightfully so, But what certain Cold Warriors, and this means the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who obviously created Operation Northwoods and have created a lot of other crazy schemes to get us into World War III. And we just went through the Biden administration contemporaneously trying to get us into World War III with the Russians. So just think about how much crazier it was back then in 1962, 1963. They wanted a second bite at the apple with the Bay of Pigs. The entire scheme of framing Oswald revolved around him with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee and his phony attempt to get a visa to go to Cuba after the assassination. Unfortunately, it starts on September 28th, 2 months before the assassination of JFK. And they tried to fake out that he was down there in Mexico City. And I believe the reason I'm mentioning this is the the reason those documents are so valuable is because I think if people like myself and other researchers like Rex Bradford and Jim DiEugenio and some of the other guys who know how to read these can get their hands on them, you will begin to see the connection of the dots around the framing of Oswald. That being said, I picked out a couple of documents, and then we'll go to the let's go to the Jim DiEugenio clip.
All right, before we do, we have a sponsor. So let's go ahead and roll that.
Go ahead. Yeah,
the day RFK was nominated as HHS Secretary, he declared war on Big Pharma and the corrupt FDA. During his confirmation hearing, even Bernie Sanders grilled him. But RFK fired back, exposing how Congress takes millions from pharma lobbyists.
Right now, will you guarantee do what every other major country does? It's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies; it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry. And protecting their interests.
Why does Big Pharma spend over $400 million a year on lobbying to patent natural remedies like NMN and turn them into overpriced prescription drugs? The FDA is attempting to change the status of NMN supplements to be classified as a drug, which would allow pharmaceutical companies to control it. This move is not based on the efficacy or safety of NMN, but is aimed at cornering the market and taking the supplement away from you, the consumer. But thanks to fighters like RFK, Trump, and Black Forest Supplements, we're pushing back. NMN has been called the limitless pill. It belongs in your hands, not Big Pharma's. I've been using it myself and notice a definite increase in energy with my walks, consistently achieving brisk paces each time. There's lots of videos on TikTok of people who have taken it for 1 or 2 years. They talk about their blood tests. They talk about the studies that have been done on it and report that they too feel better, stronger, and have more energy. So I got you a special deal. Buy 2, get 1 free for the next 48 hours at blackforestsupplements.com. Untold. Stock up while you can.
Hey, a Kennedy's involved, so I guess that.
That was good. Okay, you want to go to that? Yeah, Jim. Let's run. If you could pick it up, we'll just run about a minute of it because Jimmy will get into a little bit. Go ahead. This is out of Sky Television, I think, out of Australia.
Yeah,
last week.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really good that she's going to reopen this, and I think Trump signing that executive order was another really good thing. As per the belief that there was more than one shooter. There's a Zapruder film which shows.
Okay, you want to keep going a little bit?
Behind
I'm sorry.
There's the 42 witnesses at Parkland Hospital and at Bethesda at the morgue who did the autopsy that night, who say that there was a big baseball-sized hole in the back of Kennedy's head, which is strongly indicative of a shot from the front. All right. There's also the fact that there was no sectioning of either wound. There was no dissecting of either wound, either the back wound or the head wound, to see if it was a through and through shot, if it did actually penetrate the body. There's all this kind of evidence out there today that was not public back in 1963, which indicates that there was more than one assassin. And she's correct. The Warren Commission report was, to put it mildly, rather faulty.
The Warren Commission determined in 1964 that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. How did it get it so wrong?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why the Warren Commission report was faulty.
I want to break it up.
Yeah, that's a go. We'll show a little later. That was a good sample of what's going on. That was from a couple of weeks ago. Jim DiEugenio, friend of the show. Kennedy and King is his website, has a lot of great documents and a lot of great articles. The tip of the spear of the research community is with Jim DiEugenio's website, by the way. The other website, Mary Farrell Foundation with Rex Bradford, I'm a member of that. You could go there. There's many documents there, including the Warren Commission report. Now, getting back to Mark Lane, Anthony Lewis, it was a famous New York Times editorial writer, Anthony Lewis, the day that the Warren Commission report was released, 26 volumes and the additional volume, Anthony Lewis said, this is definitive. Oswald was the assassin. The report is brilliant and conclusive and comprehensive. This is the same day it was released. So 18 months later, a guy named Mark Lane writes a letter to Anthony Lewis, and he said, It took me 18 months every day, 8 hours a day, to finish the 26 volumes of the Warren Commission report. I just want to know how you did it in 1 hour, which is hysterically funny. Anthony Lewis becomes a mortal enemy of Mark Lane and dedicates his life to destroying him in the New York Times, which is used as a tip of the spear against conspiracy people, in fact, promoting the Operation Mockingbird project to destroy not only Mark Lane in 1967, but other people who came down the pike later. It is the same Anthony Lewis who in 1991 launches a massive PR campaign against someone named Oliver Stone for the release of the movie JFK. The same guy, same place, same time, over the same subject. Anthony Lewis earns his keep as Mockingbird Journalist of the Century in my book. Now, I just wanted to get into a little bit of the documents that we have here. These are documents that we would not have if not for people going into the archives and getting these documents. So this is to discredit anyone who believes there's no there. And Jimmy will talk about that. He was quite surprised at the 2,400 documents that the FBI is sitting on. He said that is completely brand new, that is outside the scope of any inventory of the Assassination Record Review Board. And Jim is aware of the inventory of what is there. And when you get down inside of these documents, let me just say this: the documents are coded with serial numbers. They are contiguous. In other words, if there's 24773, people are looking for 27744 and 5. So if there are jumps in the series that are already out there, cats know, people like Morley and others like Rex Bradford and Jimmy know that they're looking for a particular number, right? Okay, so dig. I mean, those.
Sorry to interrupt. That's part of the reason it's going to take time to publish them, because they have to order them out and do a table of contents and index them all.
Well, regardless of that, we don't have them yet anyway. So, right. So we're not even at that point yet of the release, because they have to be digitized and then uploaded. You could look at the 2023 folder. I mean, I've been looking at the 2023 folder. It's got thousands and thousands of documents in there already. If you want to take the time to see the history of your own country, I'm just one guy, and these other people are just one guy. But you could get in there yourself at NARIS, and you're quite, able to just click on the folder and start reading it along and learning the lingo, because there are coded lingos, there are CIA lingos and things of that nature that we're aware of, and many people are not hip to. But I just want to give you. A couple of samples of what I just quickly, I mean, this thing's on the fly. It's happening so quickly. I got the Dodgers in Japan. I got other issues going on. And all of a sudden, Trump out of the blue drops this bombshell yesterday while getting rid of Hamilton the Music over at the Kennedy Center. Ironically, he said, I'm at the Kennedy Center. So this is as good a place as any to do what he did. And he dropped that bombshell yesterday. So Eric and I felt we were going to do a whole news story, a news day today, but this, seems to have quite a bit of interest in the American people. So
we're going to open it for a Q&A after Marcus.
Yeah, we'll do a Q&A, like we have done in the past. After I just want to do this whole segment here on the front end, and then I'll try to answer whatever questions I could answer in terms of the assassination, if you could put them in the form of a question, and make it one question and not a presupposed question. If Oswald shot him, why did he wear green pants? Those kind of questions are absurd. Okay, but let me just get into this reading here. Now, this is a conversation, a telephone conversation on 11/23/63. So you're talking about the day after the assassination. And this has a history. I'll just to set it up. The audio tapes of LBJ talking to J. Edgar Hoover are available. This particular one was deleted electronically when it got to Sabato at the University of Virginia, in my humble opinion. I can't prove it, but I believe that's where it disappears in the timeline of documents and audio tapes. There's other ones of Hoover talking to LBJ, but this is the most valuable one. So Rex Bradford, who is who runs the Mary Farrell Foundation, did a major deep dive into this, an article called The 14-Minute Gap that he wrote, maybe about 10, 15 years ago. And it is this particular transcript that I'm going to read from a little bit. There's The 14-Minute Gap by Bradford, by the way. Multiple parts, brilliant researcher, and knows documents inside and out at the Mary Farrell. I think he's the president or something. Anyway, so this is J. Edgar Hoover calling up and to LBJ. And he says, I just wanted to let you know the development, which I think is important in connection with this case. This man in Dallas, we, of course, charged him with the murder. He's referring to Lee Harvey Oswald. Some of these are tough to read because they've been copied over so often to blur them. This is intentional. One of the tricks when you're dealing with photostats back in the old days was to copy them repeatedly to blur them so future historians weren't able to read them. The evidence that we have at present time is not very strong. This is Hoover confessing to LBJ that they don't have the evidence to convict Oswald. We have just discovered the place where the gun was purchased and the shipment of the gun from Chicago to Dallas to a post office in Dallas to a man or to a woman. To a woman by the name of A. Heidel. And the reason that's important is it's been alleged that a woman named Ruth Payne picked up the gun at the post office. Nobody ever signed for it. It was in violation of the United States Postal Code. You're supposed to sign for these packages. Nobody signed for this thing. Nobody really knows who picked it up. People have suggested, and I happen to agree, that Ruth Payne was the one who went to the post office and picked it up. It was purchased in March of this year. The gun is now in our possession here in Washington. We had it flown up last night, and our laboratory here is making an examination of it. And LBJ says, yes, I told the Secret Service to see that got taken care of. Hoover, that's right. I have the gun. We have the bullet. There was one bullet that was found that was on the stretcher that the president was on. That's not true. It apparently had fallen out when they massaged the heart. That's not true. And we have that one. We have we have small slivers, which are not very valuable in the identification. Well, that's not true either. As seen, we finished the testing for fingerprints, and there are some latent fingerprints on it. That turned out not to be true either. And we will then be able to test one bullet we have with the gun. But the important thing is that this gun was bought in Chicago for $21. The reality of it is it was a German Mauser. This gun was brought in later. There was nothing fired from this gun. Everyone discovers a German Mauser. Seymour Weitzman and others say it's a German Mauser. Walter Cronkite broadcasts for 2 consecutive nights on TV that the sniper used a German Mauser. This is all designed post facto to frame Oswald in the days after the assassination. And he says, Hoover, LBJ says, who is Heidel? And Heidel's an alias this man used on other occasions and is sending, according to the information we have from the home in which he was living, his mother, he kept a rifle like this wrapped up in a blanket. He's conflating his mother with Ruth Payne, by the way, J. Edgar Hoover in this particular line here. But I wanted to get to the really important part of this thing here.
Is that deliberate, or he just didn't know?
No. There's a lot he doesn't know. There's a lot he doesn't know, and he's kind of winging it. A number of hours after the assassination, he gets the floor wrong. He says the shooting came from the 5th floor instead of the 6th, but who knows what the intention was? Mm-hmm. The building from where the shots came from, and he had a package wrapped up in paper, not a blanket. The blanket was found in the garage at the home. The paper in which the gun was wrapped, that was also been sent up to the laboratory. To accommodation will be made of that. He did carry some kind of a package down there, which could have been the gun yesterday morning in the car. Now, he's already hip to this curtain rod story. None of us can swear to that. But the important thing at the time is that the location of the purchase of the gun by a money order, apparently to the Klein Gun Company in Chicago, we were able to establish that last night. That's a lie. That money order was created out of thin air. In other words, they're creating the stuff as they're going along. They're creating this, and it says, and then LBJ interrupts and says, have you established, and this is where it gets important, Have you established any more about the visit to the Soviet embassy in Mexico in September? Because LBJ knows that's the heart of the case, Eric. He doesn't care about this nuts and bolts stuff.
I have a question for you. Is Hoover actively producing and forging documents as we go, or are other people doing it and feeding it to Hoover as we speak? And
it's
Hoover
both.
might be a dupe in some of this.
And it's all three then.
Oh,
when we do Mark Lane next week, you will see how the FBI completely mostly Secret Service, but the FBI also fabricates testimony and statements by the witnesses who one after another, when testifying to the Warren Commission, tell the Warren Commission, I never said that to the FBI. In other words, the FBI and the Secret Service, I'll just give you an example. Bonnie Ray Williams famously told the FBI that it took him 5 minutes to eat a sandwich and he left at 12:05. He says on the stand, he says, I never said that. I was up there at 12:20 in the sniper's nests, quote unquote, eating my sandwich. And they go, well, you're saying the FBI got it wrong? And he's going, I don't know if they got it wrong or right. That's not what I told them. One after another says the same thing. All three black guys say, I never said that. In other words, there are narratives that have been written where they claim these three black guys said the following. All three denied it under oath. And that's where Mark Lane comes in, and that's in the book Rush to Judgment. That's why the book is so important. He was the only one to go through all 26 volumes, and Alan Dulles was right. No one's ever going to read this except for one man, and that was Mark Lane, and that's next week's show. But getting back to this, okay. Have you established any more about this the visit to the Soviet embassy in Mexico in September? J. Hoover, no. That's one angle that's very confusing, Eric. For this reason, we have up here the tape and the photograph of the man who was at the Soviet embassy. And I think Eric may have a picture of the man. I'll show you a little tiny picture of him up here in the right-hand corner. This is the famous photograph of the Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico City. That's what Hoover received. And he receives it in September from the Central Intelligence Agency, looping in the FBI about their activities in Mexico City. That's obviously not Lee Harvey Oswald. However, going back to the transcript, which had the audio deleted by, I believe, Larry Sabato, no, that's one angle that's very confusing for this reason. We have up here, meaning in Washington, the tape and the photograph of the man who was at the Soviet embassy using Oswald's name. So already Hoover is hip, and this is the two photos of the guy coming out of the Soviet embassy who they claim is Oswald. This is CIA photographs, by the way. The picture and the tape do not correspond with this man's voice. So in other words, this man's voice, meaning Oswald's voice. The tape is phony. This is a tape of a phone call. We have the wiretaps on the Soviet lines into CIA offices in Mexico City. They send the audio tape of the wiretaps of Oswald going to see Kostikov. Who's Kostikov? Kostikov is a KGB agent inside the embassy who's in charge of wet operations, aka assassinations. The plan, the frame, is that Oswald, this is the frame. Oswald goes to see Kostikov, gets money, goes to Dallas, kills Kennedy, comes back to Mexico City, flies to Cuba in Havana, and then on to the Soviet Union as a hero. That's the entire plan. We then invade Cuba. We then go to war with the Soviet Union. We win the war. We dominate the earth. Everyone's a winner. That was the big plan. The plan gets truncated for a number of reasons. One of them is LBJ fucks them. LBJ pulls the chicken switch, according to them. And that's why when he reverses Kennedy's presidential directive on withdrawing troops from Vietnam and signs National Action Memo 263, reversing Kennedy, he says, you want your war, here's your fucking war. It's a booby prize to the Joint Chiefs because he has ended their dream of invading and attacking the Soviet Union. The booby prize The prize that he gives them, because he's now president of the United States and does not want to get into a thermonuclear war with the Soviet Union, is here's your proxy war in Saigon and Southeast Asia. Good luck, have at it, knock yourselves out. And they go, well, at least we got a war. At least we've got Afghanistan. At least we got Ukraine. That begins the history of these proxy wars, by the way, which is a story for another day. But let me just get back to this. It appears that there is a second person who was at the Soviet embassy down there. We do have a copy of a letter which was written by Oswald to the Soviet embassy here in Washington, inquiring as well and as complaining about the harassment of his wife and the questioning of his wife by the FBI. Now, of course, that letter information, we process all mail that goes to the Soviet embassy. It's a very secret operation. No mail is delivered to the embassy without being examined and opened by us, so that we know what they received. Such a letter was sent to the embassy by this fellow Oswald, making a complaint about being harassed and being questioned. The case as it stands now isn't strong enough to be able to get a conviction, talking about the assassination. Then there is another angle. I think we have a very, very close plan. Now, if we can identify this man who was at the Mexican embassy, that photo that Eric just showed, the embassy in Mexico City, and this man, Oswald, has still denied everything. He doesn't know anything about anything, but the gun thing, of course, is a definite thread. LBJ, it definitely established that the same gun that killed the policeman, LBJ looking to frame him for Tippit now. This is an entirely different gun. We also have that gun. That gun was a revolver, Eric. And LBJ, you think he might have two? This is LBJ being coy, by the way. You can tell by the tone if you listen to LBJ tapes, as long as I have. There's different tones of LBJ's voice, like anybody. We all do it. But he's being coy and naive with Hoover, letting Hoover act like the big cheese. J. Edgar Hoover. Yes, we have. Yes, we have two guns. And the one that killed the policeman was a armed revolver. The one that killed the president was found on the 6th floor in the building from which it was fired. I think that the bullets were fired from the 5th floor, as I was referring before. And the 3 shells were found on the 5th floor. But he apparently went upstairs to the 6th floor to have fired the gun and throw the gun away, and then went out. He went down to this theater. There at the theater was where he had the gun battle with the police officer. Now, I believe that was their original intention, was to have a gun battle in that theater. He was not supposed to leave that theater. What happened was a crowd assembled so quickly that 1,000 people descended upon that theater, and they really couldn't get away with murder in front of that entire crowd. So they dragged him out. And anyone who says that he pulled out a gun and tried to kill a police officer, but the police officer stuck his thumb in the hammer, ask yourself why he wasn't charged with attempted murder of a police officer. You think they were
resisting arrest?
Or resisting arrest. You think they were afraid to throw these charges at him? Henry Wade, the most corrupt DA in Dallas history. Anyway, LBJ, I wonder if you will get me a little synopsis. And then they says, thank you. Okay. That particular transcript was hidden for a long time. So that's some of the stuff that you think you know everything about the assassination. You're wrong. Nobody knows everything about it. And that's why we dive into these records. And that's why it's going to take months to read the 80,000 pages that are coming out. Just like the story I just said with Mark Lane with the 26 volumes of the Warren Report, only 2 guys he knew ever read it, himself and an obscure DA down in New Orleans named Jim Garrison, who simultaneously, not knowing Mark Lane, was reading them at the same pace that Mark Lane was in nonstop time. You know,
did they ever work together?
Yes, he becomes a deputy DA. He gets deputized, as does Mort Saul. They both get deputized by Jim Garrison. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you that. And now, here's a document from the United States Justice Department, because a lot of these documents are going to come out of DOJ, as Eric and I have discussed. That we don't need anymore. That's the last page of the LBJ one. But this one here, not that. I'm going to show you one right here, if we could see it. This is from the Department of Justice, And it's a document from the 1947. This is how far back this goes. United States Department, FBI, right? Note, extra copy, enclosure not verified by official report, return to file. This is highly sensitive. Okay. It is my sworn statement that one Jack Rubenstein of Chicago, noted as a potential witness for hearings of the House Committee on Un-American Activities Committee, is performing information functions, which means he's a informant, for the staff of Congressman Richard M. Nixon, representative of California. It is requested Rubenstein not be called for open testimony in those aforementioned hearings. So this is the document that we got, 1947, about the Nixon staff requesting from the FBI not to call Jack Ruby as a witness in these House Un-American Activities Committee hearings in 1947, Eric. This is how deep these documents go. Does it have anything to do with the assassination? You tell me. Tangentially, he's a player in the game, but you know, this is a different subject. And that's why Roger Stone famously said when Ruby kills Oswald on TV, Nixon famously says, "I know that man, that's Jack Rubenstein," because he does know that man, Jack Rubenstein. It does not mean that Nixon is involved in the assassination, folks. It merely means that Jack Ruby is a player working for the United States government. And as Eugenio points out, there may be a three-prong assassination team of the CIA utilizing Cuban shooters and utilizing the mob through Jack Ruby to get rid of Oswald on Sunday.
You mentioned Nixon involved with that. Is it possible that Ruby was a snitch also for RFK, JFK when they were in the Senate? Or,
that I don't know. I don't know about that. But this was, they were investigating a specific thing, which was mob involvement in unions in Chicago. That's, in other words, he was only knowledgeable about that one little area, Eric. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So there's Oswald and there's the Mexico City thing. And then we get into Sylvia Duran, which we got into. And now, but Eric had the document up there. This is November 25th. This is 2 days later. This is a memorandum to Bill Moyers. And I said, who's Bill Moyers? I remember him. He was the head of PBS. That's right. That's Bill Moyers. And this comes from Nicholas Katzenbach. Now, Nicholas Katzenbach, because Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr.'s father, is grieving the loss of his brother, he takes over Katzenbach, and he's acting head of the DOJ, de facto head. Number three, I just wanted to point out a couple of these things here. Number two, this is number one, just the intro. It is important that all the facts surrounding Kennedy's assassination be made public in a way which will satisfy people in the United States and abroad that all the facts have been told and that a statement to this effect could be made now. Number one, the public must be satisfied. Oswald was the assassin. Now, keep in mind, this is less than 48 hours after this thing. Who writes a memo like this within 48 hours of the assassination? Right? I mean, it's so crazy. I mean, if this came out months later, you go, all right, okay, we got to do something this month.
It's a narrative build, obviously.
Obviously. Then you get to number two, let's say. Speculation about Oswald's motivation ought to be cut off. Okay, how do you do that? And we should have some basis for rebutting thought that this was a communist conspiracy. That was what I was alleging earlier on. And the Iron Curtain Press is saying, as the Iron Curtain Press is saying, a right-wing conspiracy to blame it on the communists. Unfortunately, the facts on Oswald seem about too pat, too obvious. Marxist, Cuba, Russian, wife. The Dallas police have put out statements on the communist conspiracy theory. Now, that has to be reined in. That was originally going to be handled by LBJ through the Dallas police, and he turned the spigot off on that. Number three, the matter has been handled thus far with neither dignity nor conviction. Facts have been mixed with rumor and speculation. We can scarcely let the world see us totally in the image of the Dallas police when our president is murdered. I think this objective may be satisfied by making public as soon as possible a complete and thorough FBI report on Oswald and the assassination. This may run into difficulty of pointing to the inconsistencies between this report and statements by Dallas police. In other words, there's now so many holes in the storylines because the Dallas police were in on this Soviet communist plot theory line, and they went to the mat the second it happened, saying, we caught this commie red-handed killing the president. And then LBJ had to turn off that spigot. Then on the second page, it says, it's page 412, the only other step would be the appointment of a presidential commission. I think, however, that a statement that all the facts have been made public property in an orderly and responsible way should be made now. We need something to head off public speculation and congressional hearings. Okay, so he's writing to the chief aide of the President of the United States, LBJ, who's been president for 2 days. That's Bill Moyers. Bill Moyers knows that LBJ
and Oswald's still alive at this point, right?
Absolutely. He knows that LBJ is a megalomaniacal, sex-addicted, bipolar alcoholic. How does he know that? Because he went to one of the top psychiatrists in Washington, D.C., and told him the description of his imaginary boss. So he's now having to deal with this himself. That leads to the creation of the Warren Commission, is the importance of this document, because Congressman Luna, her predecessors at that time, was saying we need congressional investigations, and 10 of them were springing up overnight. And LBJ had a heart attack saying we can't have all these congressional and Senate and private blue ribbon commissions, hence the Warren Commission. And Moyers gets this memo from Nicholas Katzenbach, I think the Monday or Sunday night. Yeah, he gets it Sunday night. Now, that being said, I wanted to get into a CIA memo. This one here, which was declassified in 2003. You can't see the memos at home. Yes, you can, Johnny. I think we could see the memos at home. This is my parody of Carson and Jim Garrison. Anyway, so this is declassified. This is a CIA special release. This is in 1992. It was not released in 1992. It was declassified in 2003. Again, these are for people who believe that all the information is out there or all the information is destroyed. Two cynical, sarcastic viewpoints by people who don't know the history of these records. And this is for the Director of Central Intelligence from Kenneth McDonald. You say, who's Kenneth McDonald? Well, Kenneth McDonald was a guy who was the chief internally of CIA history, Eric. So he's sending a letter because they were requested by the House Assassinations Committee to produce all of this stuff for the hearings. So this guy was assigned, this McDonald, by the CIA director to go into the archives of the CIA to find out what they had on Oswald, right? And it says, number one, as you requested on January 16th, the history staff has now surveyed CIA records from the House Select Committee on Assassinations into the assassination of JFK. As promised in my January 30th interim report, I can now give you a full account of our findings. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to give you the whole report, but I'll give you some of the highlights. Number three, general description. The HSCA, House Committee Activity Collection, defined as all records that the CIA provided to the committee for its 1977-1979 investigation, is a large and chaotic, Eric, collection. Beyond the 64 boxes sequestered by Congress that have been involved in FOIA litigation, there are 16 boxes of Oswald's 201 file and numerous loose folders, and then in parentheses, mainly from Mexico City Station records. And that's the important part of this document released. This is a 1992 letter released in 2003. 2003, Eric. Why? And it's because of that line I just read. They were collected for the Warren Commission investigation. Most of this material can be found on microfilm in the sequestered collection. This is inside the CIA. Of the 64 boxes, 34 have material collected by the Directorate of Operations, while 29 contain records from the Office of Legislative Counsel, now OCA, Inspector General, Office of the General Counsel, Directorate of Science and Technology, which was Sidney Gottlieb, by the way, Office of Security, as well as several boxes of HSCA staff notes and records. Box number 64 contains 72 microfilm reels, each equivalent to a box of records, Eric, which include, stand by, Oswald's 201 file and Mexico City station records, as well as other 201 files and information about the Cuban exile groups. This is what's still out there. This is what's still never been released. Then it gets into organization, the 201 files on Oswald. They claim they had no 201 file on Oswald. Here internally, they're discussing how big of a file they have. Not that they have one, it's the size of it. Non-CIA material. The collection includes a lot of third agency material, mostly from the FBI. FBI reports the 16 boxes of Oswald's 201 file. Nearly half of the 34 boxes consist of third agency material. There is also some documentation of foreign liaison, mainly with the Mexican government. Again, my theory about why everything's being withheld. Number 7, CIA complicity. Our survey found nothing in these records that indicates any CIA role in the Kennedy assassination or assassination conspiracy, if there was one, or any CIA involvement with Oswald. Now, this is underlined and highlighted by me. These records do reveal, however, that Clay Shaw was a highly paid CIA contract source until 1956. That's how we know Clay Shaw was a CIA agent. From this document, this is officially come out in 2003, and everyone who made a mockery of Garrison, this is the CIA itself admitting they lied in that trial. While nothing surfaced on Carlos Marcello in the collection, we found substantial documentation of other members of the mob, including Trafficante. Anyway, this thing about Clay Shaw and the 201 files, the reason that's important is because we didn't know it until this stuff came out in 2003. Again, demonstrating how important the information is down there that we don't have yet. Now,
how many documents were dumped at that particular juncture?
Yeah, we don't, right, Eric. Who knows? We saw those at the at that warehouse, whatever that was in Maryland.
No, I mean,
right?
It took a while to even find that particular nugget that you have in your hand.
Mhm.
I mean, when you have 80,000 documents, it takes a while to find these.
Without a doubt, bro. Without a doubt. Okay, now I'm going to get into something else here. This is from 1967, internal document number 1035-960 from the Central Intelligence. This is my copies from my personal CIA files. This is to chief certain bases and stations, document number 1035-960 for subject countering criticism of the Warren report. Psychological 1 and 2. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to number 2. Again, this is 1967. This is for a review request in 1976. Number 2, this trend of opinion about the conspiracy, the 46% of the American public did not think Oswald acted alone. This trend of opinion is a matter of concern to the United States government, including our organization. Just because of the standing of the commissioners, efforts to impugn their rectitude and wisdom tend to cast doubt on the whole leadership of American society, Eric. Moreover, there seems to be an increasing tendency to hint that President Johnson himself, as the one person who might be said to have benefited, was in some way responsible for the assassination. Innuendo of such serious effects not only the individual concern, but also the whole reputation of the American government. The aim of this dispatch is to provide material for countering and discrediting the claims of conspiracy theorists so as to inhibit the circulation of such claims in other countries. Background information is supplied in classified section and number of unclassified documents. Now, Mark Lane, when he goes to publish the book, and I'll get into this next week in more detail, cannot find a publisher in the United States of America because of that internal move by the CIA contacting every publisher in the United States to block the publication of Rush to Judgment. He then finds in England a publisher who then uses an allied source in New York to publish through Britain Rush to Judgment, which goes to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and stays there all year to the chagrin of the CIA. So let me just tell you this. This is letter A. This is how to defend against Mark Lane and others. Point out also that parts of the conspiracy talk appear to be deliberately generated by communist propagandists. Urge them to use their influence to discourage unfounded and irresponsible speculation. This is to their Mockingbird reporters, editorial writers like Anthony Lewis and others at Newsweek, Time, Alex Gibney's father over there at Newsweek. This is who is working for them. Letter B, to employ propaganda assets to answer and refute the attacks of the critics. Book reviews, feature articles are particularly appropriate for this purpose. The unclassified attachments show some guidance. Our play should point out, as applicable, that the critics are 1, wedded to theories adopted before the evidence was in. 2, politically interested. 3, financially interested. 4, hasty and inaccurate in their research. 5, infatuated with their own theories. In the course of discussions of the whole phenomenon of criticism, a useful strategy may be to single out Epstein's theory for attack. And this is not that Epstein. This is an author named Epstein. Using the attached Fletcher Nebel article and the Spectator piece for background. Although Mark Lane's book is much less convincing than Epstein's and comes off badly, where contested by knowledgeable critics, it is also much more difficult to answer as a whole as one becomes lost in a morass of unrelated details. This proves to be absolutely untrue, and we'll get into that next week. But what I wanted to point out was the depth that the CIA went to coming up with the phrase conspiracy theorist, which is brand new, and how they send out their minions to destroy any discussion of a conspiracy in the killing of JFK, Eric. Here's another tip. Conspiracy on the large scale often suggested, they're giving you tips, editorial tips now, Hunley, on how to write articles. Conspiracy on a large scale often suggested would be impossible to conceal in the United States since informants would expect to receive large royalties. Note that RFK, Attorney General at the time, and John F. Kennedy's brother would be the last man to overlook or conceal any conspiracy. You will later see these talking points in almost every single article written against the JFK research community. Oswald would not have been any sensible person's choice for a co-conspirator, Eric. He was a loner mixed up of questionable reliability and an unknown quantity to any professional intelligence service. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of the CIA's criticism of countering the Warren Commission in 1967 through that internal memo. And, once again, getting into the declassified documents that we already have, it was revelatory. A lot of them were declassified, were sealed. I'll give you another one. You got the Warren Commission interviews Jackie Kennedy. And what is the subject of the interview with Jackie Kennedy? It's Jackie Kennedy's up close and personal view of the wounds to her husband. Guess what? That interview was sealed until 2039. That's how, and this is the wife of the president, the closest witness. Why would you seal that evidence? Because it shows where he is shot. And if you open the Warren Commission to the Jackie Kennedy, you will see that it is deleted. And in the footnotes, you will see that that is sealed in the National Archives. I am hoping, with the strength of God's will, that that is part of the release. Because in theory, it should be.
Yeah,
it should be. And that's testimony to the Warren Commission. This is not some internal CIA report. And also, you got William Manchester's book, which is not purview to this. There's a chapter interviewing her about her belief that LBJ was involved in the killing of her husband. So you got a lot of information that's still out there, despite what the naysayers keep saying. Now, to address the naysayers, which I have to address, the situation that we covered with E. Howard Hunt. I'm going to give an example. E. Howard Hunt, if you watch our episodes, what do we have, 2 or 3 episodes on Hunt? 2. We have 2 episodes on E. Howard Hunt. At one point in E. Howard Hunt's career for the CIA, working with John Dean, they decide to go into the National Archives and alter documents. This is E. Howard Hunt's idea and Liddy, to alter documents framing JFK for the assassination of the DM brothers, to diminish the power of Ted Kennedy ever running for president and to embarrass the Kennedy history. So what happens is E. Howard Hunt rewrites these memos from Saigon to Washington and creates this fictional memos that JFK is aware of the coup and the assassination, ordering it of the DM brothers. Now, why do I say this? I say this because phony memos could be in this release of the JFK files. Why? Well, here is E. Howard Hunt actually going to the National Archives and inserting in 1968 documents that he made himself, replacing the documents on the DM brothers assassination in the National Archives.
Wow.
That's right. Wow.
Okay.
And I'll give you one more, which I think is and about this, just to know, just so people realize, Eric, and excuse me for talking so much, but Eric is sick today, so I'm trying to pick up the slack for Eric. I don't mean to just be a blabbermouth. He's not feeling very well. The Central Intelligence Agency document that I'm going to show you right here. This is what's known as the Rowley Memo. There's a very famous memorandum from John McCone, the director of Central Intelligence Agency, to James Rowley. This is March 3rd, 1964, known as the Rowley Memorandum from the United States government. Chief of the United States Secret Service from John McCone, who was director of Central Intelligence. It says, this is subject to Central Intelligence report on the assassination of John Kennedy. In response to the request made by your office, this is from John McCone to Rowley. In response to the request from your office on February 24th, 1964, R.E. Lee Oswald's activities and assignments on behalf of this agency and Federal Bureau of Investigation, there follows a narrative summary of the internal subversive activities of Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, you'd think that was very explosive because it says activities and assignments on behalf of this agency, Eric. That could be very explosive. And if you go down a little further, Oswald's subject was trained by this agency under cover of the Office of Naval Intelligence for Soviet assignments. During preliminary training in 1957, subject was active in aerial reconnaissance of mainland China and maintained a security clearance up to the quote-unquote confidential level. His military records during the period are open to your agency, and I have directed they be forwarded to the commission. Subject received additional indoctrination at our own Camp Peary, Eric, site from September 8th to October 17th, 1958.
I know that place.
Right. And participated in a few relatively minor assignments until arrangements were made for his entry into the Soviet Union in September 1959. While in the Soviet Union, he was on special assignment in the area of Minsk. It would not be advantageous at this time to divulge the specifics of that assignment. However, if you wish this information, it can be delivered to you. Now, why is that important, this document? I'll tell you why it's important, because it's a complete fraud. Everything about this memorandum has now been proven to be a fake. This right here. There are people in the research community to this day who still believe this is real. I dug this up in 19... Is
that the one that Oliver Stone...
I was just going to tell you.
Okay.
I dug this up myself, not, just digging up documents. I wasn't basing my life on it. But I brought this to Oliver Stone, who 2 weeks later ran a check on it himself and ripped my head off for bringing this document to his attention, showing to me in a very loud way that this was a fraud and the document was made up. Now, that being said, I'm saying this again because we can't believe every single thing that just because it's in the National Archives, Eric. And this is a very, very famous fraudulent document that Jim DiEugenio and many others are well aware of. Some people today, I won't mention any names, still believe it's real. It's not. And how do we know that? Because up in the upper right-hand corner, which you can't see over here, are code numbers and office numbers that I was talking to you about. And when it was investigated, no such numbers or series of numbers existed in the United States government. These numbers up in the corner were made up and have no connection to anything, just so people understand this. But a very compelling memo with U.S. government logos on it and everything else. So the reason I mention that is because of Hunt putting in phony documents into the National Archives, this being whether the Soviets wrote this or the CIA wrote this or whoever wrote this, it's not really that important. The importance is you can't believe everything you read just because it came out of a building.
And I was wrong. It's 3 for Hunt.
3, I thought so. 3 episodes, yeah. Yeah, but in that episode, I discuss his phony memo, his dirty tricks memo of going into the actual National Archives and changing history. And he's not the only one to do that. There are others who have been caught pilfering, inserting, removing, doctoring. Look what happened with the President Trump's documents that the archivist was fighting with him at Mar-a-Lago about. That's what she worked with the FBI as a setup against Trump. Back, a couple months ago, he finally got the documents back. The entire thing was a setup using the archivist, politicizing the archivist for the first time. And now we don't have an archivist, which is why I believe we don't have any documents to speak of.
There's people posting right now. I don't know if you've seen this before. Hold on. I was just looking at the background just in case I get proven wrong. It's very hard to tell if these are brand new or not. They're kind of claiming like these are new.
I don't know. They're usually in a folder, but we'll see tonight.
What's newly digitized on the site, but I don't know what point or when that was.
Well, we'll have to look at it after the show, but nevertheless. Oh, I see. You want me to read them while the show is going on and give you some answers. I got you. Okay. Anyway, maybe we can move on to.
Yeah, I'll see if there's any questions.
Oh, I wanted to see the rest of that Jim DiEugenio thing.
Hang on.
Remember, you cut it off. There's a little bit more there. I thought you might like.
Okay.
Faulty, one of them was that they relied almost about 80% of their work was based upon the work of the FBI. And the FBI, of course, did not do a very thorough investigation. To put it mildly, J. Edgar Hoover was head of the FBI, was not on really friendly terms with Bobby Kennedy, who was at that time was about to resign, but he was the Attorney General. All right. And if you recall, this is very interesting. That weekend, Kennedy was killed on a Friday. That weekend, J. Edgar Hoover went to the racetrack. In other words, he didn't even come into work on Saturday.
And by the way, those people who are watching this later, I'm breaking this up because I never know if we're copyright claimed. So if we are and I have to strip it out, that's why you don't see the clip in here.
He actually went to the racetrack with his second in command, Clyde Tolson. So it was not, again, I'm being mild. It was not a very thorough investigation by the FBI for a lot of different reasons.
Okay, well that's enough. I mean, we got the gist of it. Maybe we can get some questions from some of the audience members who are curious about certain things, and we'll do the best, Eric, that we can to answer them. I guess we have had Q&As before.
Yeah, we may do. Actually, maybe we should schedule another full Q&A too.
Okay. Well, we got Mark Lane next week, so I mean, we got that,
of course,
giant, and that is a big dive into Mark Lane. That is a huge original gangster.
Is that going to be a 2-parter?
Not right now.
A lot.
It may not be 2, maybe 1.5, but we'll see.
Okay. Pamela Clifton said, "Happy Tuesday." As usual. Thank you, Pamela. She's OG, very supportive. Mary S. Love the show and the welcoming live chat.
What are they, harsh to you? Are they torturing you, Mary?
No, the chat's very nice today. Ann Williams, hi, Mark and Eric, have a drink on me when you go to Las Vegas with $50. So yeah, that
Oh my God,
pay
it's
for a
50
drink.
pounds. It might even be more than $50. Pounds
Oh
are.
shoot, I can't see shit.
That's all right.
That's like real money, not US.
Wow. By the way, if anybody's coming to Vegas and you have your questions, Barnes and I will be happy to try to answer it. I watched this incredible hush hush the other day that Barnes did on the USS Liberty, Eric. If people can, or locals members can go into join their locals.
I posted on our locals as well.
Oh, good. Okay. It's fantastic by Barnes. Holy crap. Friend of the Jews. Oh, here's the meetup. This is going to be great. Because Barnes knows a lot about these, not as much as some people, but he knows a lot about American history. And he can answer a lot of your questions about these and other subjects.
And also he can speak about the liberty from a non-Jewish perspective.
Yeah, he doesn't have a dog in the hunt. I mean,
he's not a Zionist or anything.
He's really good at it. And I was watching, recent documents have come out, is really what Robert has said previous to this, that documents have come out relatively recently that people didn't know from back then, again, from the archives.
Yeah. George Toth, JFK comes alive. Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Diffuse gifted 10 America's Untold Stories memberships, which we always appreciate. Question from Ken Martin. Are all the mob, Cuban, and other theories just shiny objects to distract from the only person to gain, LBJ? Granted, there are dozens of others who would have wanted him dead.
Well, I mean, there's theories that they want to perpetuate to get the focus off of them. I mean, look at it from the CIA's point of view. They've been working to knock down this number for decade after decade, the number being the percentage of people who think that they did it. That's their number one goal. Any way they can divert the American people into thinking it was some other force doing it. Now, keep in mind, some other force is not the same as the CIA using a mob-related guy for their own efforts. That does not mean the 5 crime families in New York were involved in killing Kennedy. It's a huge difference, and people don't seem to be able to delineate between the mob killing Kennedy, which mob, which person, the Chicago mob, all the mobs together, working together with Mickey Cohen. The point of the matter is they owned Jack Ruby, and Jack Ruby was their go-to guy. That's why I was showing you the 1947 document that Ruby was working with the deep state going all the way back to 1947. There are guys that, including Johnny Roselli, including Trafficante, including others who were involved in running guns to Cuba and gambling in Cuba and other issues. They used them in World War II, as many historians are involved with the invasion in Sicily.
Well, they also used them here for the ports.
Yeah. I'm just saying. When you say the mob's involvement, the mob is so big, and it's the same thing with the Cubans. I mean, there were disgruntled Cubans being used. Yeah, General Walker was involved in a number of Cuban groups that were radical, and the CIA was working with them to overthrow Castro.
100%. Dogboy said, not impressed at all by Pam Paper Tiger Bondi.
Again, like I think for myself, figured out this week, I believe she is really the press spokesperson for the Department of Justice, and also the face of the Department of Justice, and also the person who's going to go on Fox and be the spokesperson for the Department of Justice. She's a glorified Carolyn Leavitt, and I believe that Trump has his own attorneys as deputy attorney generals in there now who are going to be doing the grunt work for the Department of Justice. I believe she is merely the face of, and if that's the case, that's why Kash Patel has put the hotline into the president, because she's not even electronically in the loop now.
Yeah, well, hopefully Bongino, he reported to duty yesterday, so hopefully he's jumping in too. Edward Joyner, considering the advent of AI, this may be the last citizen-led investigation of a potential government cover-up. The slow walk of the docks are probably meant to maintain whatever credibility of the CIA and FBI.
Well, I don't know how slow of a walk it is. You're talking about a guy who's been in office for 50 days. I mean, slow walk over 60 years. Yeah, that's something else. Right. Of course. I believe, and I've never deviated, it's all about Mexico City. And it's funny because I think there's going to be egg on the face of people like Morley and others who believe that Oswald was in Mexico City doing things and have written books about the fact. I believe that history will be altered. Kind of like when Columbus came back from the New World and the map industry went berserk. In fact, I believe they wanted to assassinate Columbus because all of their maps were now garbage when Columbus came back to Europe. I think a number of books will be garbage after we get to the bottom of Mexico City.
Even some of the stuff that we mentioned might be.
Without a doubt, of course.
So I mean, it's hard to know. I'm not your buddy guy said JFK files just dropped. I haven't confirmed that. JS said Trump said he saw info that convinced him not to release the info. In what was released, someone needs to ask him which of the documents was he shown that made him concerned.
Well, he's been vague about it. He's not going to answer that. He's been vague about it on multiple occasions. He's not going to get into it. Pompeo sold him a bill of goods temporarily. He came back, he released him. So what's done is done. Pompeo was a snake and he had Trump's ear for a while. And he convinced him that whatever these particular cherry-picked ones he showed him would lead to consequences.
Do you think there might be Clint Hill documents coming out?
I don't think so. These guys who were Secret Service agents they're foot soldiers in a way. I mean, the Rowley documents, now that would be interesting because Rowley is really the one who's legally responsible in terms of LBJ using him as a tool. Secret Service rounds up television news broadcasts that day in Dallas. They round up radio broadcasts. They seize film. The real evildoers are the Secret Service agents in the field before and after. FBI, not so much.
All right.
Because he can't control J. Edgar Hoover. He can't control James Rowley.
Right. Oh, okay. You know what? Is that the same page? Sorry, I'm trying to do multiple things. Dan the Man with the $20 super sticker. Thank you.
Dan the Man.
Let me see. I'm not your buddy guy. Sorry, I heard from a friend before verifying files. Yeah, I can't quite tell. It looks like he may have put some stuff up there, but I can't say for sure. Spinnergate with a super sticker. Thank you. Steve in London, been off sick for 2 months. You guys have kept me almost sane. Cat Mama said document dump has started.
Okay.
And then Jason Finlow said, should Johnson's name be removed from all government buildings and his library shut for good?
Well, you're going to have a lot of Democrats going crazy about that. But,
yeah,
they took down statues of every single person in American history. It's not that far-fetched. Talk to Robert E. Lee's relatives.
True. Okay, yeah. We'll look as we go here. Let me see if there's any Rumble rants, and if not, we'll be heading over to locals.
Well, I just wanted to address this thing with John Roberts today, as long as you're looking for that. John Roberts has apparently thrown down the gauntlet of the Supreme Court, protesting that Trump has mentioned the impeachment of a judge. The judge apparently, of course, has a daughter. The daughter apparently again has a NGO that is gathering money based on illegal aliens. You can't make this up, Hunley.
It gets worse, by the way.
It gets worse by the day, right?
No, John Roberts assigned that judge to be the head of FISA. They're connected.
Okay, it's very good. I believe that Roberts should be impeached. How about that for an idea?
Perhaps.
Put him on his defensive. Put him on his defensive. We may not have the votes, but let's take him down. Let's go for it.
At least make life very uncomfortable.
Yes, that's what I mean. There's only one way to make it uncomfortable. By the way, the articles of impeachment, again, stupidly, are not from Trump. They're from a congressman in the House. What does Trump have to do with it?
Which is exactly what supposed to happen.
Explain what Roberts is protesting about, Eric.
Because Trump said that he should be impeached, and
okay,
Roberts said, "How
so
dare
what?
you?"
Are you going to go after Biden for all his insane rhetoric about fascists and Nazis and everything else? And I mean, what is Roberts other than without protesting too much?
Obviously that's true, and obviously he wouldn't do it with Biden, but we know that. I mean,
right.
So, but we're going to continue this discussion over in locals.
Oh,
and I hope you guys consider heading over there.
Okay.
There's a link in the description.
And we're getting somewhere.
Absolutely.